Chosen ones, listen carefully. There was a question you used to ask God. Not once. Not casually. You asked it with tears in your eyes, with desperation, with faith that shook you to your core. And then, something happened. You stopped asking. Not because you got the answer, not because it stopped mattering, but because the silence hurt too much. You told yourself, maybe it's not God's will. You said, maybe I'm asking for too much. You convinced yourself that letting go was maturity. But hear this clearly. God never stopped listening. The question you buried, the prayer you abandoned, the hope you locked away to survive, God has been holding it this entire time. And now, He is answering you. 1. God's silence was never rejection. Chosen ones, you misunderstood the silence. You thought silence meant no. You thought delay meant denial. You thought unanswered meant forgotten. But that interpretation came from pain, not truth. God does not operate on panic. He does not rush because you are anxious, and He does not move according to emotional deadlines. Silence is not absence. Silence is preparation. When God is quiet, it is not because He has turned away from you. It is because He is working in layers you cannot see. You hear nothing, but things are moving. You see no change, but alignment is happening. What feels empty to you is actually full of unseen activity. God is rearranging people who would have harmed you. He is delaying timing that would have broken you. He is shaping your character so the answer doesn't destroy your faith once it arrives. You assume God is slow because you only see the surface. God sees the end from the beginning. He knows what would happen if He answered too early, too quickly, or exactly the way you asked. And because He loves you, He refuses to give you something that would cost you your peace, your humility, or your dependence on Him. Some of you were asking for things your heart wasn't ready to steward. Some doors would have crushed you under their weight. Some blessings would have fed pride instead of purpose. Some answers would have pulled you away from God instead of closer to Him. So God stayed silent, not to hurt you, but to protect you. Think about this. If God immediately answered every prayer, you would never grow patience. If He removed every struggle instantly, you would never build endurance. If He explained every delay, you would never learn trust. Silence forces you to decide whether you trust God for who He is or only for what He gives. And here's the part many people miss. God's silence often means He is saying, not yet, not no. But not yet requires maturity to accept. It requires faith that doesn't collapse when there is no immediate reward. God's silence is not abandonment. It is restraint. It is wisdom. It is love refusing to move before the right moment. You weren't rejected. You weren't ignored. You weren't forgotten. You were being protected from something you didn't yet understand. And when you finally see the full picture, you'll realize this. If God had answered you when you begged Him to, you would have thanked Him in the moment, but regretted it later. The silence saved you. 2. You stopped asking because you stopped trusting. Chosen ones, this is where it really broke. You didn't stop praying because you stopped believing in God. You stopped praying because you stopped believing He would answer you. At first, you asked with confidence. You believed God would move. You expected change. You waited with hope. But then time passed. Nothing shifted. The silence stretched, and disappointment quietly took root. Disappointment doesn't always make people angry. Sometimes it makes them cautious. You didn't rebel against God, you protected yourself from hope. You lowered your expectations so you wouldn't feel crushed again. You told yourself you were being mature, realistic, strong, but what you were really doing was pulling your heart back because trusting God started to feel risky. You began praying safer prayers, smaller prayers, prayers with no emotional investment. Not because God changed, but because you did. You stopped asking boldly because bold faith hurt when it wasn't immediately rewarded. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Faith that only exists when answers come quickly is not faith, it's preference. Real faith continues even when God feels silent. Real faith keeps asking, even when the outcome is uncertain. God is not offended by your questions. He is not threatened by your persistence. He never asked you to stop coming to him just because you were tired. But you assumed silence meant disinterest. You assumed delay meant rejection. You assumed unanswered meant unworthy. None of that was true. God never withdrew access. You withdrew expectation. You kept believing God could do it. You just stopped believing he would do it for you. And that's why this matters. When you stop asking, it's not humility, it's resignation. It's faith shrinking under disappointment. It's hope going quiet so pain doesn't get louder. But God never told you to stop asking. He never told you to lower your faith. He never told you to protect yourself from him. In fact, Scripture makes this clear again and again. Persistence moves heaven. Not because God is stubborn, but because persistence proves trust. God is drawn to people who keep coming, even when they don't understand. Who keep asking, even when answers delay. Who refuse to let silence define God's character. You stopped asking because trusting God without guarantees felt too vulnerable. But hear this clearly. God did not stop answering because you stopped asking. He waited patiently because he knew you would return. And now, you're here. That means your trust is waking up again. 3. The question was shaping you more than the answer. Chosen ones, you thought the question was about the outcome. It wasn't. You thought you were waiting on an answer. God was working on you. That question you kept bringing to God, the one you replayed in your mind late at night, the one you whispered when no one was around, it wasn't just a request. It was a refining tool. Every time you asked it, something surfaced. Your impatience, your motives, your dependence, your need for control. God was allowing the delay because the process was exposing what still needed to change inside you. If God had answered too quickly, you would have received the result, but missed the transformation. And God is not interested in giving you something that leaves you unchanged. Some of you wanted the blessing, but you weren't ready for the responsibility attached to it. You wanted relief, but not refinement. You wanted resolution, but not surrender. The delay was not empty time. It was formative time. While you were waiting, God was teaching you how to trust without evidence, how to obey without clarity, how to remain faithful without reassurance. Those lessons cannot be taught quickly. They can only be learned over time. And here's the hard truth. Some versions of you could not coexist with the answer you were asking for. If God gave it to the old you, it would have amplified pride, fear, insecurity, or self-reliance. So God waited not because he was withholding, but because he was preparing a version of you that could carry the answer without losing him. You thought the question was testing God's willingness. It was actually testing your readiness. God was shaping your patience so you wouldn't panic when pressure came. He was shaping your humility so success wouldn't corrupt you. He was shaping your obedience so the blessing wouldn't replace him. And when you finally stopped asking, the shaping didn't stop. The process continued quietly. God never wasted a moment of that waiting season. The delay was not about God hesitating. It was about God developing. And now, when the answer comes, it won't just solve a problem, it will fit the person you've become. That's why the question mattered. And that's why the wait was necessary. 4. God waits until your heart can handle the answer. Chosen ones, this is the part most people don't want to hear. God does not delay answers to tease you. He delays answers because timing without readiness is dangerous. You were asking for something good, but you were not yet equipped to receive it without it changing you in the wrong way. God cares more about your heart than your comfort. more about your character than your convenience. An answer given too early becomes an idol. A blessing received too soon becomes a burden. A breakthrough without grounding becomes destruction. God waits until the answer will deepen your faith instead of replacing it. Some of you were still attaching your worth to the outcome. You needed the answer to feel validated, secure, or whole. And if God had answered you then, the gift would have taken his place in your heart. God will never compete with his own blessings, so he waits until you are no longer desperate for the answer to define you, until your identity is rooted in him, not the result, until you can hold the blessing with open hands instead of clenched fists. This is why God often answers after you've let go, not because letting go earns the answer, but because letting go proves you're ready. Readiness means you can receive without pride. Readiness means you can lose it without collapsing. Readiness means you can be grateful without becoming dependent. God is not withholding from you. He is guarding you from receiving something before it can bless you properly. You wanted the answer to change your situation. God wanted the answer to strengthen your soul. And when your heart could finally handle it without arrogance, without fear, without replacing God, only then did the timing align. The delay was never about punishment. It was about protection, maturity, and love working together. God waited because he was preparing you to receive the answer and remain whole. 5. God's answer often looks different than you expected. Chosen ones. This is where many people get confused. You were waiting for God to answer in a specific way, a clear sign, a sudden change, a dramatic breakthrough. You had a picture in your mind of how the answer should arrive. But God is not obligated to follow your script. You asked for relief, and God gave you strength instead. You asked for escape, and God gave you endurance. You asked for removal, and God gave you growth. At first, it felt like he didn't answer at all. But what really happened is that he answered at a deeper level than you expected. God's goal is not to make life easy. His goal is to make you strong, faithful, and aligned with him. So, instead of changing the situation immediately, he often changes you within the situation. This is why some answers feel invisible at first. You're looking for circumstances to shift, while God is reshaping your heart, your thinking, your reactions, and your priorities. And here's the hard part. When God answers this way, you don't get instant relief. You get gradual clarity. You don't get fireworks. You get wisdom. You don't get an escape route. You get resilience. But in the long run, this kind of answer lasts. If God removed every challenge the moment you asked, your faith would remain shallow. You would follow God for comfort, not conviction. But when God strengthens you instead of rescuing you, your faith becomes rooted, not conditional. Looking back, you'll realize this. The answer you wanted would have solved the moment. The answer God gave transformed your future. You thought God was saying no because the problem remained. God was saying yes by making you capable of standing. And when the external answer finally comes, if it comes, it will rest on a foundation that cannot be shaken. That's why God's answers often feel unfamiliar at first. They are not designed to impress you. They are designed to prepare you. And once you see that, you'll realize God was answering you all along. 6. God answers when you are ready to obey. Chosen ones. This is where things get uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Some answers are not delayed because God is silent. They are delayed because you already heard him and didn't move. God had already nudged you, already corrected you, already warned you, already pointed something out that needed to change. But you wanted confirmation without commitment. You wanted clarity without cost. You wanted reassurance before obedience. That's not how God works. God does not reveal the next step to people who refuse to take the current one. He does not negotiate obedience. He does not explain himself to avoidance. Many people say they are waiting on God, when in reality God is waiting on them. You were asking God for direction while ignoring conviction. You were praying for answers while resisting change. You were asking for breakthrough while holding on to habits, relationships, or attitudes God already told you to release. And here's the truth. God's silence is often a test of whether you will obey without being forced. Obedience is not about understanding everything. It's about trusting God enough to act on what you already know. The moment obedience begins, clarity follows. The moment alignment happens, movement resumes. God does not respond to passive faith. He responds to surrendered faith. This is why some answers only come after action. Not because action earns God's favor, but because action proves trust. When you move in obedience, you're saying, God, I trust you even without full explanation. And that kind of faith gets God's attention. The delay wasn't because God was unwilling. It was because obedience was incomplete. Once you stop resisting what God already made clear, what you've been waiting to hear will start making sense. The answer wasn't hidden. It was waiting on your obedience. 7. This moment is part of God's answer. Chosen ones, understand this clearly. You are not here by accident. You didn't stumble onto this message randomly. God is intentional. And when He repeats a message, it's because timing has reached a turning point. This moment right now is part of the answer you thought never came. God is reminding you that the conversation never ended. You stopped asking, but He never stopped working. You went quiet, but He stayed close. You assumed the door was closed, but God was waiting for the right moment to reopen it. This message is not the full answer, but it is the signal that the answer is unfolding. God often speaks in stages. First comes recognition, then comes realignment, then comes release. You are in the recognition phase right now. God is awakening your faith, restoring your expectation, and calling your attention back to Him. The answer doesn't arrive all at once because instant clarity would remove the need for trust. God reveals just enough for the next step, never more than you need, never less than what will keep you moving. Your responsibility is not to demand the outcome. Your responsibility is to respond. Respond with renewed trust. Respond with obedience. Respond by asking again, not from desperation, but from confidence in who God is. God is not revisiting your question to reopen old wounds. He is revisiting it because you are finally ready to walk through the answer without losing your faith. So don't dismiss this moment. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't convince yourself it's just another message. God is re-engaging you, and if you stay alert, stay faithful, and stay obedient, you will see this clearly. The answer didn't come late. It came at the right time, and it has already begun. Chosen ones, this is where you decide what you do next. You can return to silence, lower your expectations again, and convince yourself this was just another message. Or you can recognize what this really is, a reminder that God never stopped listening and never stopped working. The question you buried was not ignored. The prayer you abandoned was not wasted. The hope you suppressed was not foolish. God allowed the silence because He was shaping you, protecting you, and preparing the answer in a way that would not destroy your faith. Now the responsibility shifts to you. Ask again, not out of fear, but out of trust. Move forward, not needing every detail, but willing to obey. Stay attentive, because God often answers gradually, not dramatically. This is not the end of the waiting season. It is the end of confusion about the silence. God is speaking again. God is moving again. And the answer you thought you missed is unfolding right on time. Stay faithful, stay obedient, stay ready. Because for the chosen ones listening now, God is not silent anymore.